So I'm grateful for the reminder. I'm grateful to know how many shoulders I stand on from my little spot at this podium. From Reverend Arthur to Reverend Jim and Reverend Crystal, two ministers that I knew, and anybody in between who has held this position of holding the container in this way. I am so grateful for both the community that I inherited, the community that we continue to build together. It's an incredible gift in my life that at this point in my life, this is what I get to do with who I am. And as Julia mentioned, right, it's this. It is the way we continue to feed each other. So happy anniversary. And I'm not going to sing the Flintstones anniversary song, although Carol and I did do a rousing rendition, maybe downstairs in the kitchen. It's interesting that I'm going to refer again to the core values that are not hanging here because we have this beautiful painting by Jean Akpu. But I'm just going to read the core values because they help tell the story of who we are as a community. We say it's all about love. Surprisingly, I talked a lot about that last week. I talk about love a lot. But it is all about love. We're a spirit-centered community. We warmly welcome all. We embrace diversity. We walk our talk with integrity. We're compassionate. We're joyful. We practice sacred service. And we claim spiritual abundance. All of those values and how we live them out do tell the story of who we are. We tell that story with Hospitality Hour. We tell that story when we remember how many people in those early days of the 51% who said we'll have a spiritual home when 51% of you say you're ready. And how those initial community builders stepped into that. We stand on their shoulders in order to have this spiritual home here. And we are the community that continues to build what it means to have this anchor in our lives and then to grow that relationship of love and compassion back out into the world wherever we find ourselves. Because we know we live those values sometimes with ease and grace and a joyful heart, and sometimes really digging deep. We live them in our personal lives. It's all about love and our close, intimate relationships, those circles that circle ours close to our heart. And we live those values in the broader spiritual home that we build with and for each other. It's an inside job. And I cannot do it alone. We cannot, any of us, do it alone. We do that deep inside work of living our values, of living who we say we are, of showing up for the story of who we are day in and day out. We do that communally, in communion with each other. Last weekend, Rebecca Solnit was interviewed in the New York Times about her new book, The Beginning Comes After the End. The beginning comes after the end. Notes on a World of Change. I came across her interview actually through a Substack by Liz Bakar, whose tagline is, and this is how she talks about herself. She's a professor, a prize-winning author, and a longtime scholar of religion who somehow ended up with no religious affiliation of her own. That made me laugh because it also helped me to recognize how many of us come to Unity with a container from a tradition that somehow didn't fit us quite right anymore. That we were looking for something that had a big enough umbrella for us to feel at home, where we could walk through the doors and feel peace, be still. To feel that sense of welcome when we come in shining and when we come in under a rain cloud, to come in fully who we are and to leave reminded of that deeper part of who we are. What struck me about both the interview that I then did go back to find and Liz Bakar's response to it is that both of these women look clear-eyed at what is alive in the world today. What feels like an ending, what feels like an unsettling time of both upheaval, destruction, cruelty, war. Not only here, but around the world. They see that. They're not burying their heads in the sand. They recognize that people in our own country are hungry, are frightened about what the future will look like. They also see that we have this kind of collective hunger for a counterweight, something to balance that, but that we are sometimes, and too often, waiting for a leader. One person who's going to be the voice who says, rally behind me, we've got this. They recognize that hunger in us as something that is not probably where the change will come. So here is Rebecca Solnit. I often think one of the great weaknesses of our era is that we get lone superhero movies over and over that suggest our big problems are solved by muscly guys in spandex, whose superpower is the ability to inflict and endure extraordinary violence. When actually the world mostly gets changed through collective effort. It brings up something really beautiful that Thich Nhat Hanh said at some point before he died a few years ago, which is the next Buddha, the next teacher, the next Buddha will be the Sangha. The Sangha in Buddhist terminology is the community of practitioners. Maybe the next hero, Solnit writes, is the community. That changing the world is a lot more like caregiving than it is like war. Yeah, I hear some snapping in the audience. Here in this spiritual home, in this spiritual family, in this Sangha, caregiving is what we do. It's who we are. It's how we live our mission to embrace the divine essence of all beings. The ones that we can look around and say, yeah, you are definitely a divine being. But we embrace the ones that we find it challenging to see that divine spark. And we do that through being a blessing in the world, right? We are the hands and the heart and the voice that puts our bodies in the mix. Liz Bakar, in response to Rebecca Solnit, writes this, that about caregiving as not only a metaphor, but a multi-faith-filled, embodied response to the world's suffering. She writes, in Jewish tradition, Hesed is usually translated as loving kindness, but it's more like steadfast, relational attentiveness. Steadfast, relational attentiveness. The quality that holds communities together, not through conquest, but through showing up again and again for the people in front of you. In Buddhism, karuna, compassion as active practice, is one of the 4 divine abodes. That means it's not a feeling. Compassion, that is not a feeling you have or that you hope to have. It's a discipline you train. We train our hearts to be compassionate. In the early Christian church, diaconia, service, which is where we get the word deacon. I'll have to tell my deacon dad that I learned that word today. Service was the radical distinguishing practice of the early Christian movement. Caring for widows, for orphans, for strangers at a time when the Roman world had no framework for that. And in Sikhism, seva, selfless service, is so inseparable from worship. Hear that. Sacred service is so inseparable. You cannot tease out the sacred service from the worship. Let my life be prayer. It is so inseparable that it's been made literal and institutional in the free community kitchen attached to every Gurdwara. Every worship space has a free community kitchen because you cannot separate sacred service from how you give praise to that source. And of course, she says, in these very different religious traditions, how they look in the world through ritual and worship and prayer might be very different, but how they show up to tend the people in front of them is not a distraction from the real work of spiritual life. It is the real work of spiritual life. Tending to each other, tending to the stranger, to the widow, to the orphan, tending to all of creation is the real work of having a spiritual life. We are not here to transform spiritually, to pat ourselves on the back that, wow, you are so enlightened. Go you. Pat yourself on the back, sure. But that enlightenment, that deep, rich, spiritual life that we feed through prayer and singing and laughter and tears and being present with each other and present to each other, that is the work of tending each other, that we grow beautifully well here in our community. It is our primary defining charism that we tend each other's hearts and souls and bodies with care. Moment by moment, choice by choice, when we show up for each other, we show up as love, as compassion, as mercy, as stubborn hope. Optimism and pessimism have it figured out that either the future is going to be okay, and you're optimistic, everything's going to work out, or you're pessimistic that everything is doomed. They have a sense of knowing what the future holds, where hope Stubborn hope as a spiritual practice involves that tending of each other. We don't know what the future will hold. But what we do know is that we are walking into that future from this moment, from this choice, from this kind word, from this smile, from this phone call, from this cup of coffee. We are walking into that future with each other, guided by love, guided by God, to be beloved community. Not only today, but to plant the seeds, like seeds were planted over 30 years ago for us to be here today. We are seed planters. So as we tend each other and nourish those seeds, I hope with everything in me that 30 years from now, somebody's looking back on the seeds that we started here, and they can see the way that our love transformed our community and all of those communities that rely on us to tend with loving care the needs of our friends and neighbors. Carol, I love the way that you adapted that prayer this morning from the Unity wheel circle of prayers. I also adapted a prayer to close today. And it's one I've shared before, but as I was really sitting with this week, it was the prayer that kept coming to me. And so I share it again. It is John O'Donohue. It seems fitting as we get ready to celebrate my second favorite Irish saint in a couple of days, to share this beautiful Celtic wisdom that I adapted for us to hear not only a blessing for a new home, but our blessing for our home, this home, and the home that we create for each other in the shelter of each other. May this community shelter your life. When you come home here, may all the weight of the world fall from your shoulders. May your heart be tranquil here, blessed by peace the world cannot give. May this home be a place of spiritual abundance, where the grace your life desires always finds the pathway to your door. May nothing destructive ever cross your threshold. May this be a safe place full of understanding and acceptance, where you can be as you are, without the need of any mask or pretense or image. May this home be a place of discovery, where the possibilities that sleep in the clay of your soul can emerge to deepen and refine your vision for all that is yet to come to birth in a world transformed by the spiritual awakening of us all. May this be a sacred space of courage, where healing and growth are loved, where dignity and forgiveness prevail. A home where patience of spirit is prized and the sight of the destination is never lost. Though the journey be slow and difficult, may there be great delight around this sanctuary. May it be a house of welcome for when we feel broken and diminished. May we each have the eyes to see and embrace the divine essence of all beings, so that no visitor arrives without a gift and no guest leaves without a blessing. We are the heart and the hands and the voice of Spirit, alive, tending each other in the shelter of this spiritual home, in the shelter of each other. May we know it, may we be it, may we love each other madly all the days of our lives. And so it is. Amen.